start talking about Afghanistan, Dave, where the Taliban has had a major offensive. On the last show, me and Will talked about, I think they had seized five capital cities by the time we had recorded the show. By the time the show was published, they had seized a sixth, and I believe that's where they're at now. They control like six of the
I,
Afghan provinces. However, we
I
are
think they got a
recording this.
seventh this morning.
Okay, all right, and we are
Yeah.
recording this like 12 hours or so before it's published. So, if the number continues to go up, anyways, through all of this, the Biden administration, at least publicly, they're not saying that we have to go back. Now they are increasing bombing. They're doing more in Afghanistan, but the rhetoric from the Biden administration is this is on the Taliban, and that we're still in withdrawal mode, and it's kind of full plan ahead on keeping with the withdrawal. So it doesn't seem like a sustainable plan at this rate to just keep 650 troops in the embassy in Kabul and continue to bomb the Taliban. It seems like at some point they would become Taliban targets, especially as the Taliban take more and more territory in the country. So, Dave, what the hell is the Biden administration's plan here? I can't figure it out. I keep waiting, I guess, for him to backtrack on the withdrawal and be like, no, we're staying. We're not going to let the Kabul government fall. But here it kind of sounds like, at least from John Kirby, that's the Pentagon spokesperson, saying that there's not much the U.S. could do and it's on the Taliban. So what's going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Taliban, with these major gains, in all the press briefings with the Pentagon, the White House, all the hawkish reporters are saying, like, what are you going to do? You're just going to leave the Afghan government? And John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, he said to the reporters, he said, it's their country to defend now. It's their struggle, is how he put it. And now, like you said, the U.S. hasn't stepped up airstrikes in recent weeks, but it doesn't seem like it's really doing much to stop these Taliban gains, and it's certainly not going to be enough to reverse them. So I think that's what the Biden administration is looking at. If they want to push back the Taliban, they would have to go back in, and you can't just send a couple thousand troops in. You would have to send tens of thousands in, and we know that no matter how many troops the U.S. sends, they can't beat the Taliban in a war in Afghanistan. And now there's currently, this is what all the reports say, about 650 troops, U.S. troops left in Afghanistan. They're mostly at the embassy in Kabul. And so now, as August 31st approaches, which is the deadline Biden set for the withdrawal, it's not really clear. I think what they call the formal withdrawal is just about over. They want to leave these 650 troops in Afghanistan. They want to keep some kind of influence, and possibly they might continue airstrikes. But again, we just don't know. We're not going to know until August 31st. And I actually do think that there is a chance that they say, you know what, if the security situation in Kabul deteriorates enough, that they might just, pull the plug on that plan to keep the troops in the embassy, and the U.S. empire might really just be defeated here. Because it's not sustainable. I mean, everything has told us from this special inspector on Afghanistan reconstruction, the CGAR reports, he's been saying this whole time. If you leave Afghanistan, the Afghan military, they're not going to be able to sustain themselves no matter how much money you throw at them. They need support from the contractors that specialize in these advanced warplanes and helicopters and stuff. And so I don't know. I mean, the U.S. has also said that if the Taliban takes over the country completely by force, that they'll like isolate them, or that they'll be a pariah state, is how they put it. So I don't know what that wouldn't really do much. I don't think that's much of a threat to the Taliban, but we'll just see what happens in these next couple weeks, and it's kind of interesting to watch. I mean, it's really sad and horrible what's happening in that country. I mean, a lot of civilians are being killed, but the U.S. might just have to get out of there completely, and then see what happens when all the dust settles, and hopefully Afghanistan doesn't plunge into a war that lasts, another 10 years or so.
Right. Well, I guess that is one thing. It seems to be going faster than even maybe the Taliban predicted. It was only a couple months ago they were saying that they are making gains, so quickly that they were trying not to take the provincial capitals. And then the Taliban said it was the U.S. airstrikes that provoked them into starting to take the capitals. I mean, what do you have like an idea of how all this has gone down? I know the Hawks right now are trying to kind of point at the Taliban and say, "Oh, look, these are the people breaking the deal that they signed with Trump," but that seems like a real stretch. It seems like blaming Iran for breaking the nuclear deal now. The U.S. has already violated and trampled on that thing. We stayed past the deadline. We've been bombing the Taliban, and so I just want what do you think is kind of the way this has gone down?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what did happen. Biden did break the deal by pushing back the original May 1st withdrawal deadline, which the Taliban has accepted. Say what you will about the Taliban, they're not stupid. They knew well enough not to start attacking U.S. and NATO troops.
And still haven't, right? Have you read any reports of them hitting any Western or even attempting to attack Western troops or even Western NGOs? I haven't read really coming under attack. It's pretty much been a focus on the Afghan government and their people.
Yeah, no, they haven't. So, I mean, there could be truth to that the Taliban, because there was reports, Taliban spokesman saying that they were avoiding the provincial capitals because they didn't want to break the deal. Now it was a vague agreement that the U.S. and the Taliban signed, but there was annexes that said that the Taliban couldn't, march on any major urban centers and provincial capitals. But then, the U.S. did step up airstrikes pretty good. It was a few each day. And then all of a sudden these capitals fell. So they could have just been waiting outside these cities for the U.S. to leave and taken the opportunity to do it when the airstrike stepped up. But yeah, and it's this offensive. It was almost inevitable that the Taliban would be taking over as the U.S. is leaving. But this major offensive didn't start until after May 1st, which is when the U.S. was supposed to leave. So if the U.S. was out by May 1st, there could have been a chance for a political settlement. A small chance, but there still could have been a chance. So by pushing back the deadline, Biden made it more likely that there would be all this fighting and violence and death.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be even quicker than I had anticipated, but I do think the Biden administration is going to quickly come to the part of this war where it's either escalate or leave. Mm-hmm. And as you're kind of in agreement that you're not sure even the Biden administration knows exactly what they're going to do at the time. One very interesting thing that I've seen in all this, Dave, though, is the Hawks are now out saying we told you so on Afghanistan. This has infuriated me a little bit because they're claiming that we knew the government would fall when they left and that this is their fault for leaving. But I mean, was there any indication that just a staying a little bit longer was going to change anything, or was the Afghan government basically fundamentally set to crumble as soon as the U.S. contractors left? Because then the one main advantage they have over the Taliban right now, it seems, is the Air Force, and the Taliban have neutralized that in a couple ways, but mainly it seems like it was the U.S. incompetency in building the Afghan military that has now made it non-functional.
Yeah, and I mean, for all those Hawks to say that, I just don't understand how that's an argument to continue the war when the U.S. has been there for almost 20 years and it's just been an utter failure. There's nothing to show for it. And every, educated proponent of getting out of Afghanistan, I mean, you read Scott's book, he was always honest about the fact that once the U.S. left, there would probably be a civil war and the Taliban would probably win. But that's just an example of the futility of the war. So And even, at the height of the surge, 100,000 troops in the country, that didn't do anything. What are you going to? You could send the whole army in, and they're not going to be able to win the war. So, yeah, it's none of the U.S. just has to pull a Band-Aid off and get out. And it's just it is like the Hawk, as frustrating as the Hawks are. I mean, they're just wrong and they lie about everything. So their opinion, unfortunately, it has too much influence in Washington. But what they say, doesn't really matter so much because they're dishonest and they have their interests.